That the tall tower that we're going to see here, I really built that for John. Truth be known, because John likes to see just how far we can go on 40, and that I kept it under wraps actually when I was extending that tower, and I didn't tell him what I was doing, and it was pretty tough. Actually, the first guy that got to see this 40-meter tower extended was W2GD. He visited in September, and I said, John, don't tell N2NC. I want him to come here in October and see this and go, what the heck happened? So, but we'll get into that a little bit.
How high was it before?
It was 190 feet. It was just a stack of two.
Just
a
yeah.
stack of two.
So when's the 80-meter Yagi going in?
I'll have more on that later. So, this is actually my second station.
Yeah, that's what you look like.
Remember that from the Biltmore, John?
Yeah, I did.
That's when I was 13 years old. I had just passed my general class test in Pittsburgh, and some of the QSL cards that are on the cork board there behind me, some of those guys are still around today. Like, everybody has an LU5 HFI card, right? And K3LR. So lots of cool DX as a novice. When I took my general test in Pittsburgh, it was the first Friday in November. And after the code test, you know, it was the 13 word a minute copy and the 13 word a minute sending. I'm 13 years old. There's another kid next to me. And because there was a break in between the code and the theory test, I said, hey, you know, there's a CW sweepstakes contest on. He says, yeah, I know. I said, are you going to get on? He says, well, I don't know. We just moved here. It was Randy Thompson. So, and that's the cool thing about this hobby, and all of you know what I'm talking about, is that it's the people and these things that you can't even imagine are going to happen to you that result because of ham radio. And it's just like working with John, you know, in the cellular business. I would always work with a ham, you know, because part of the fraternity. So, anyway, next slide, John. Here we go. So we're out here where you don't really need antennas to hear your So you're the first thing the Europeans hear. Sometimes K3LR is the last thing that the Europeans hear. But we're about as far west in Zone 5 as you can get. Next slide. So John said 3 miles. It's actually 1 mile.
Okay, thanks, Andrew.
You know, 1 more mile to the west, and we'd be K3LR Zone 4. But something happens along this dash line here, and like the RF gets attenuated by 20 dB. But we're very. This is as John commented, we're right on Interstate 80, so you can see it. You can actually see the towers from Ohio, and we're up on top of a nice hill. Next slide. And this is really what makes this QTH work. And I moved here in 1987, so this was really before HFTA and all the fancy computer programs allowed us to see exactly what a QTH fall-off would do. But there was a famous DXer down in Pittsburgh. How many remember W3CRA? And he did unbelievable things going into Asia on 20 meters. You know, and again, I was 13, 14 years old, heard all this going on, and he was on the side of a hill. And so this is on the side of a hill going towards Europe. And of course, Europe is where the money is. And, you know, you talk about return on investment or ROI in the business world. At K3LR, we have QOI, QSOs on investment. But towards Europe, it falls off almost 300 feet very fast down to a riverbed. And it also falls off very well towards Japan. Now it's flat, maybe slightly rising towards other areas like VKZL and the Caribbean, but that's not as important because there aren't as many QSOs there. And we have antennas that can deal with that. but definitely towards Europe, we have a tremendous advantage in our takeoff. Next slide. So a little overhead look. Oh, can we get down the lights up front here? These look like the sliders of air.
Yeah.
It's a little better. So this is the north end of the property. I-80 would be right at the top of the screen. And there are two foursquares, one on 10 meters and one on 20 meters. The one on 20 is really tucked in there by the road. And this blob here is a full-size foursquare on 10 meters. These foursquares are the real secret to hearing in band. It's no cakewalk either, the in-band thing. As anybody who has operated at a multi-multi and you're trying to have two stations on the same band, let's say on 40 meters within 40 kilohertz of each other, it's hard. But these foursquare receiving arrays make it tolerable. And they're full size, so they're the transmit foursquares, but we only listen on them on the second station, on the multiplier station. So we never transmit on them, but they're fully functional foursquares, and they are a savior for hearing in band. This is the 160 meter transmit array. You can see the center tower. This is identical to AA1Ks, except for I don't have a second director towards Europe. There's a blob up there where I put a ground system. When AA1K said, hey, I put another director towards Europe, I said, I want one of those too. I never got it. So the ground system is in, but I never got around to putting the element there. But we'll talk more about the 160 array in a minute. For 80 meters for the run station, there are 11 stations at K3LR, 2 on every band, except for 160 just has 1. And so the 80 phased foursquares predominantly belong to the run station on 80. And here's a foursquare here and a foursquare here. This is broadside on Europe, and it's 5/8 wavelength spacing, and it's just like stacking antennas, or stacking Yankees. You get 3 dB a gain. And you can see the pop, I call it, when you combine these, because the operator can select one foursquare, or he can put them both in phase. But what it does do, it's the old donut thing, it squeezes the pattern. And that can be a bad thing sometimes. For instance, sometimes we don't always work the Africans that I think we should work, because we've squeezed that. Most of the time when the band's open to Europe, we run the pair together. This is the 40 meter tower, and at the top of the mast it goes to 275 feet. Next slide. This is in the middle of the property, the 15 meter run stack, which is it's 160 foot tall. It's got 4 7-element Yankees on it. Then the 10 meter run stack is a 4 high array. It's 32 elements. There's 4 8-element Yankees. And then the 20 meter run stack, which has some second station antennas on it as well, tops out at 245 feet. Next slide. So this is the 40 meter tower. This is the one I talked about extending as a surprise for N2NC. John, you were out of the room. I remember when you showed up in September and it was up, and I said, you can't tell NC what's going on. I wanted him to be surprised when he came there. But you can see the 3 4-element OWAs. This was actually the start of the optimized wideband array that I worked on with Jim Braycall, WA3FET. He might talk about things like that when he visits here to give a program. But this was, all of us that were using 3-element beams on 40 were frustrated with the bandwidth. You know, it would cover CW, or cover phone, and you had to have a tuner or something to adjust. With the OWA, they're on 50-foot booms, they're full-size elements, and that first director is 4 feet away from the driven element. That first director, being so closely coupled, drives the feed point impedance perfectly to 50 ohms. So there's no gamma match, there's no beta match. It's perfectly 50 ohms, and the SWR from 7 to 7.3 never gets above 1.2 to 1.
It's actually about 700 kilohertz.
Yeah, it's an incredibly wide SWR. Now the front to back peak and the gain are identical to a 3-element beam. But, so it's not really 4 elements, it's that close director acts as a match on a broadband SWR machine. But boy, do amplifiers love these OWAs, because nothing changes. That's the beauty of it. Nothing changes. Oh, when you're moving 40, 50, 100 kilohertz, the SWR stays exactly where it is. So 260 feet at the top of the tower, over 190, over 120. And I'll show you the switch box that the operators get to use to actually select that. On top of the 40 meter beam is a 9-element 10 meter beam at 275 feet. That is twice as high as the top antenna on the run stack. Sometimes that antenna belongs, all the 10 meter beams that are on here, and there are 4 of them, they all belong to the mult station, the second station. But sometimes the only way we can work a DX station, especially with depressed conditions, is with that 275 footer. What's interesting about that antenna, not only is it one of the highest 10 meter beams in the world, but it's mounted 180 degrees out from the 40 meter yank. And somewhere along the line back in the 70s, somebody in the PVRC was doing that, where they had the 10 meter beam 180 degrees out from the 40 on the same mast. This way we can use them at the same time. 40 still runs the rotor when 40 is open, but when 40 is open to Europe, 10 is open into the South Pacific. So it works out, and vice versa. So it works out pretty good. We have 2 green heron controllers. One lives at the 40 run position. One lives at the 10 meter mult position. And because they're green herons, they actually read the correct azimuth. So the 180 is already factored in. And then when 40 meters goes to bed in the mornings, they say, all right, 10 meters, you have control of it now. And they work that out. There are 2 antennas on 20 on this tower for the multiplier station on 20. This tower, all the towers at K3LR, except for the verticals, but all the other towers, the 5 towers, are Pyrod. They're not Rome. And Pyrod is a commercial grade tower that is made out of solid steel. So the legs are solid. It's not pipe. So you don't have to worry about any rust. And they're extremely strong. This is a 2-foot face tower, so it's 24 inches. We have a 24-inch face on 20, and the rest of them are 18 inches. And then all of the guy wires here are either fiberglass or they're Philly strand. Yes, say.
Is that your lowest 40 meter beam?
120 feet? Yes. Remember, we're in western Pennsylvania, so that still, I think, is low enough. Yeah, you think it should be lower?
Well, for here, that's
Yeah.
too high.
Actually, you know, from a high-end perspective, John has done a lot of work with this, and really he likes the top 2 when the sun is up like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He likes feeding the top 2. Now, I will tell you that just here in the last few weeks, we found a problem with this antenna that may have been there for 10 years or more. I happened to have the Rig Expert analyzer hooked to it, and I was rotating it. And I noticed the trace came in choppy. I said, what the heck is going on? So I put my network analyzer on, which has a real-time sweep, and sure enough, there's something loose on that antenna. That antenna came down on the ground today. Just today, I saw it down on the ground, and I got in the car and drove out here, and it's being rebuilt tomorrow and Thursday, and Friday it'll go back up. But there's something not right here, so during ARRL, maybe it will be a different antenna. But it had VSWR chunks, and that's a bad thing, especially in a multi-multi. Yes.
Tim, are all these antennas turning?
Yes, they're all on ring rotators.
Oh, okay, I was wondering.
None of these are rotating towers. These are all ring rotators. These rings are the K0XGs on the big antennas, and then the rest of them are the old TICs. There are 26 rotors at K3LR. and 4 of them are prop pitches, the rest of them are rings. Every antenna rotates. Okay? 138 square feet of wind load on one tower.
And you're still using Philly, or you are using Philly?
And I'm getting away from the fiberglass. As the fiberglass is turning 10 years old, it gets swapped out for Philly strand. Philly strand's life is a whole lot longer, and I have had some issues with fiberglass. So it's a whole lot less expensive, but it's tough to work with, and it has a finite life. So, next slide. So this is what the 40-meter tower looks like in the sun from my neighbor's house. They have a very good view of this tower. There's a lot of houses around me. Any of you that have watched the drone videos, I'm in a neighborhood, and so neighbor relations are key. I've had no trouble getting building permits, zoning permits. I've never had a neighbor come up and, you know, the worst thing that ever happened was that a neighbor came and he says, you know, since you moved into the neighborhood and put up those towers, my TV reception has gone to crap because you're sucking up all the signals. And I said, well, Gail, I said, it doesn't quite work that way. I said, would you like, I'd like to fix your antenna. Can I climb your tower? He had a little HBX tower, you know, a little 38-foot job. Went up there and I hooked up the rusted leads from the open wire. It's magic. So neighbor relations go a long way. Next slide, John.
Have you ever helped them out with different TV sets?
No, he did not go to any bad TVs. He's right towards
You never had any dirty TVs?
No dirty TVs. So this is, so you get a little bit of scale, the 40-meter tower. This is I-80 back here, the 80-meter verticals, and we'll talk about the DX barn here in a minute. Next slide. Bottom of the 40-meter tower has a couple more 10-meter beams on it. There are 4 10-meter beams. That's for the mult station. They need to look a lot of directions. Next slide. In the middle of the 40-meter tower is one of these N4IS top beam horizontal Waller flags. It's at 160 feet. So it sits right here. If you can look real close, you'll see the wires going between the fiberglass elements. It looks like a 15-meter beam. It's about a 44-foot boom. Sometimes, it's the best 160 antenna for receiving. But many times it's not. But it's up against very stiff competition. But think about it. If you're in a very restricted area, like John was saying, 50 foot by 100 foot, and all you've got is a tower, this gives you a rotatable receiving antenna that you can use on 160, 80, and 40. It's not cheap, but it's a whole lot better than trying to listen on an inverted L. So I was more curious about it than I was that it was going to be the Holy Grail. And we have learned that you rotate it so that it's in a noise null, so the noise comes down, and sometimes signals pop better on that, but not all the time. I'm glad we have it because there have been times during like a CQ Worldwide on a Friday night a few years ago, it was the best antenna to Europe for hours. So if we didn't have it, we wouldn't have worked as many stations. Next slide. So this is looking up at that tower. There's a lot going on. And you can see just how massive the cross bracing is on there and everything to take care of all that wind load. But
You didn't have to go to Stargate.
no. One of the things you'll see here too, is you'll see insulators. By the way, I really like coming and talking to a club like the FRC because I can get in the weeds. Normally, I give presentations I give Skype presentations. Actually, last year I did 45 Skype meetings all over the country. But I can tell you why this insulator is here. All of the, at the top of the guy wires, there's insulators as they attach to the tower. So there's a bent pin shackle there and an insulator. Does anybody know why that is? Because these are non-conductive guy wires. This is fiberglass or Philly strip. The preforms are long enough that they will interfere. One time, again, I was watching the SWR meter as I was rotating, and I saw 3 peaks and valleys. And I said, and when, you go to Easy Neck and you model it, and sure enough, when those preforms are connected to the tower, they will, and the Yagi is very close to it, they will interfere with the performance of the Yagi. So by putting these insulators here, that fixed all that problem. Next slide.
You also enlarged your product line by adding those. Because you couldn't get them anywhere.
That's right. I was saying if I'm going to use them at K3LR, maybe somebody else would like to use them too. So we get them at DX Engineering and get them on the shelf. And then it's nice for me because I just have to walk down a flight of stairs and there they are. Okay, this is the 20-meter tower. So this is the second tallest tower. Both of these towers are registered with the FAA and the FCC because they top 200 feet. This has got an 80-meter dipole, which is basically a square dipole on top of the mast, and then there are steps on the mast so you can climb up there. And that's about 108 feet long. It has loading coils out in the middle, and we predominantly use this for the mult station, for the second station on 80. And it does pretty well, but it's still about probably 5 or 6 dB down from that pair of 4 squares. But more on that later. This is the top 6-element beam on 20 meters. There are 4 20-meter Yagis. Again, a 50-foot boom. Remember that 40-meter tower? That's the largest 40-meter antenna array, height and number of elements in the world. I haven't been able to find anybody who's got anything taller or more elements. The same for 20. I don't know anybody who's got any 24 elements starting at 230 feet. And then we'll come down the tower. Next slide. Here's a couple more of the 20-meter beams. There's a pair of 15s on there. Next slide. And in the middle on this 20-meter tower are 2 of the W6NL Moxons. This is used by the second station primarily for transmitting. Remember, we have these 4 squares that they listen on. So that's 185 over 120 for the multiplier station on 40 meters. And boy, when you take and put the ICOM 7851 on the run and the one on the mult, and you say, here's 12 elements starting at 260 feet and this pair of Moxons, it's amazing how well that works. It is amazing how well these Moxons work. They started out life as a Cushcraft XM240, and they were converted. 22-foot booms. The W6NL Moxon version, the SWR, is better than 1.3 to 1 across the band. So really a good performer for a very short boom. And it is more efficient than the Cushcraft antenna is with the coils in there. Next slide. So this is looking up at some of the 20-meter antennas. Again, you can see the ring rotors where all of the antennas can rotate around the tower.
You never had a problem with tick rings.
Never.
My nose is growing.
I have, we've had these tick rings up for 26, 27 years, and I've standardized. I only use the 32-inch model. I only use the Bison motors. There are probably 12 different designs of ticks out there, but all of mine are the same, and that is the key, is to make sure that from my standpoint, because there are little tricks to them. And in fact, Sig and I worked on a grounding scheme, which has really paid off very well, which has shut down all the noise on the rotation. And they're not foolproof and they're not for the faint of heart, but working with a green herring controller, they seem to be pretty good.
Carl knows your name.
Oh yeah.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah. I hope he never dies. Every time I send an email and I say, Carl, I need a motor repaired, it's like, is the email going to bounce? But he's still there.
He's still.
Next slide. This is the 10-meter stack, 135 feet with the four 8-element OWAs. Again, SWRs 1.25 to 1, 28 to 29. It's beautiful. Next slide. Oops. Oops. Story that went around.
Where's that kid?
Field day this year, this past June, we've gotten a little soft at my local radio club that I'm president of, and we do field day from K3LR. But we put up some wires in the trees and have a tent out there in case the paper shows up, you know. It's a good photo op. But at 1:15 in the morning, there was a party at the neighbor's house, a graduation party, and one of the party goers got in his parents' pickup truck and promptly drove into the K3LR yard and hit one of the guy anchors on the 20-meter tower. And in fact, he got the pickup truck up on the guy wire so much so that it pulled the tower towards him. And then when he flew over, when he got the truck over it, it now snaps back. And it was a bad deal. We had just re-guyed the tower with Philly strand 2 weeks before that. I think if it would have happened with the old fiberglass, it might have been game over. But because of the strength of the Pyrot tower, and the fact that it had been re-guyed, and the fact that he didn't cut the guy, he did a lot of damage to it. I should have included the photo where you can see the Philly strand actually trying to pull out of these preforms. And preforms being folded back on themselves. Booms on the antennas actually crinkled on the tower. Our club had a communications trailer right very close to that guy anchor, and it was thrown into my garage. And I thought, must be a neighboring club that doesn't like us. They came and beat the crap out of our trailer. And so W3YQ was staying down in the barn, and I got him up. He says, "That's nothing. Take a look at your tower." I had not realized initially the damage to the guy anchor and the tower itself. So Pyrod came out, did an inspection. They said the tower's got to be replaced. So the entire thing had to come down. This is some of the old tower. And because the wind spec has changed since I put this up originally, and we've not been grandfathered in with the replacement, we had to go to a larger face tower. And so this is some of the construction of the new tower. Next slide. And 350-foot crane. And the neighbor across the street comes up to me and says, "Oh, this looks expensive for that poor kid." He says, "With this whole job, you know, the replacement of the tower and the antennas and everything, they're going to cost about $10,000. I said, "You see that crane over there? In fact, this crane had a smaller crane that builds this crane." I said, "That's $10,000 just for today." Our two bearings in there. Next slide. So this is looking down at the drone, you know, all new aluminum for the antennas. So there are 10 antennas on that tower. We took the opportunity to tweak the designs because in the last 10, 15 years, there was a little bit more to be squeezed out of it when it came to front and back. You can see just vaguely here, there's standoffs there. These are bead chokes. We sell them at VX Engineering. It's number 31 material. It's about 4 feet long. But we learned several years ago that having ferrite close to aluminum reduces the effectiveness of ferrite. So by spacing them about 3.5 inches out from the aluminum, that problem goes away. So I've slowly been changing out all of the feeds so that we have the bead chokes. But that's all you have to do with these OWAs is just feed them with coax and a bead choke, and you're off and running.
W0IY.
IYH was the originator with the 43 material, but now that we got 31, and it's large enough to go over top of RG213, we don't have to use the RG142 or RG400 and then have a double female in there. So next slide. So here we are getting the top 6-element 20-meter beam with the crane. This makes it, as the tower professionals in the room will tell you, this is the way to go. That's 50 feet. Next slide. And so we use that to put all the new antennas on the tower once we had the tower built. Next slide. And here we are at the top of the tower with the two guys and the help of the crane.
Are those EX engineering steps?
No,
You don't sell them?
we don't sell the steps. You know, I've toyed with that, and I don't know that I want that liability. You know. Anyway, next slide. So, what was, this cellular telephone stuff? I got to tell you, the year was 1983, and I interviewed over in Youngstown, Ohio. They had two jobs available. One was chief engineer of a TV station. The other was being part of a startup called Cellular Telephone. And I went to a ham, who was my kind of mentor advisor, and I said, they have the TV job, chief engineer of the #1 station in Youngstown. It's open, and I'm going to take it. They got this other job, but it might not be anything. And he says, take that cellular job. You can always get it. But it's TV. It's the Holy Grail. I was a chief engineer of a radio station when I was in high school. Boy, am I glad that I followed his advice. But anyway, what's cool about this is FaceTime. I was able to FaceTime with the tower crew on the tower, These days I don't climb as much as I used to. So I said, Bill, I'm going to send you up in your very expert AA230 Zoom. So I sent it up there. Next slide. And I could see exactly what he was seeing from the top of the tower. So checked all the antennas. Everything looks good. Next slide. So we're ready to go for the contest. We wanted to be ready for CQ Worldwide Ready, but we missed it by a week. And so this was a shot that N6 TV took. Very, very happy. All the antennas performed well. We had one minor tick ring problem, but that's to be expected. Next one. So we use large feed lines for 10 and 15 meters, inch and 5/8 there. These are all cellular takedowns from years of that. There's still a lot of surplus coax out there.
More coming.
What's that?
More coming.
Yeah. Next slide, John. So this is the 160 array. These are the parasitic boxes at the bottom. There's 4 of them. One 45, 135, 225, and 315. And that's a quarter wave tower on 160, so it's 120 feet tall. Next slide. And so here are the T-wires. They are cut as directors. So they're resonant at about 1900 kilohertz. If you float all 4 of them, if they're not connected to anything, they're invisible. They're a floating quarter wave. All right, so they're invisible. So this becomes an omnidirectional antenna. As directors, if I take, this is the 45-degree element, if I ground that one, float the blue, float the 135 blue, and the 315 blue, and the other yellow, I'll put a little inductor in series with it and make it resonant at about 1800 kilohertz. It becomes a reflector. So I have a reflector, a driven element in the tower all the time, and then a director out here that's resonant at 1900 kilohertz. What that does is that's a 3-element vertical beam. And with relays here at the bottom, we can rotate that instantly in 4 different directions, very easily. 5.5 dB a gain, 32 dB of front to back over a very narrow area, but it's got great front to back and it's got lots of gain. And the nice thing about being able to switch between omni and directional is you can see the pop. Oh, I love that. Here's this guy, boom, he goes up almost a full S unit. And because the feed point doesn't move, it makes it very nice. It's a very well-behaved array. John uses it during the phone contest. I'm the 160-meter guy on CW, and it's not as good as a full-size 4-square, because a full-size 4-square, you'll have more bandwidth. This is only good for about 30, 35 kilohertz. And for that reason, it doesn't scale to 80 very well. It's just too narrow. But for that 30 or 35 kilohertz, it's really good. And in fact, So much so that we've been moving it during the modes. We'll actually move the center of the array because on phone we call CQ higher up in the band, and on CW we call CQ a little bit lower in the band. We do listen on this array as part of the noise canceling phasing system because it is quite a good listening array, but it's not the primary listening array. Next slide.
How many radials under each?
I'm glad you asked that. Next slide. Here are the radials underneath parasitics. There's 120, 130-foot radials under the parasitics. And these coils of coax here are actually quarter wave stubs because this thing is very tightly coupled to the 80-meter verticals. By using those stubs, it makes the 160-meter elements invisible at 80. So it's very cool. Next slide. Radials. We have radials. This is the driven element. So this is the center of the tower. And for those of you who can see, you will see there are 3 number 2 ground rings there. And what that is 25 years worth of worrying about ground systems. So about every 7 or 8 years or so, I get this fear that radials are breaking or being stolen or dissolving. And we put in another 120 radials. So at the moment, there's 360 there, John. And because it's a long way away from the shack, it's fed with 1 5/8 on 160.
Is that bare wire or is that?
What's that?
Is that bare wire?
Some of it is bare wire, some of it is insulated wire. I use bare wire now, but back in the day, insulated wire was what was available at the surplus place. So lots of copper strap keeping everything bonded together. And then the insulator that's there, that's a broadcast standard ceramic insulator. For the verticals on 80 meters, 120 radials, 70 feet long under each one of them. Next slide. And then very simple feed point. I use the bead chokes there too. I don't want the SWR on these 4 square arrays that come off of the elements is quite high. They're not well matched. They're not supposed to be well matched. Look, you got 75 ohm cable here. You got a 36 ohm feed point impedance. Wild things going on. I don't want that feed line to be a part of any antenna system. I want it to be dead cold. That's why there's chokes there.
You have multiple chokes?
No, there's just one. This was a control cable that was a spare. Next slide. So this is the center 4 towers. They're in the 80-meter array. This is an older picture. They used to be, these were high towers. But then I had trouble sleeping at night. You know, you go to the doctor and he says, well, I want you to take a sleep test, and maybe you're a candidate for a CPAP or something like that. I said, no, the problem is I'm worried about these rivets. And I'm worried about these rivets because over time, I think they might be causing noise. So they all went away. N5OT came up from Oklahoma and took them all away. And so now I'm using aluminum towers that are all welded together. And that's what the verticals are at K3LR. Next slide. This is the bottom of a high tower. Any of you who have a high tower, it's a familiar base. Here's another thing that I don't normally get to talk about, and I'm going to talk about tonight. Now notice that all the verticals at K3LR have X's in the straps. And the reason that that is done that way is that I used to just hook the network analyzer or rig expert from the center to that side of the ground system. Okay? And I would get one impedance reading. If I hooked it from there to over here, the ground system, I got something else. That drove me nuts. This X fixed that. So now when I get this thing to 36 ohms plus J0, I can go anywhere around that ground ring and I get the same result. I sleep better. No CPAP. Next slide.
You're a sick puppy.
John, I'll take, that's a badge of courage coming from my mentor. Every summer we go around and tweak and see if we can squeeze a few more dB out of the 80 meter verticals. Greg Orty, WAWWB, comes down. We get out every VNA, rig expert, AEA unit we can. Got to get as many different answers as possible. That's all that does, is drives you nuts. But we have a method to it, and I think we've really got these systems really tuned. The verticals work, they're tuned individually for 3510. That's a minimum dump power at 3650. And so there's dump power on CW and dump power on phone. If we were to go out and change the lengths for the two modes, it would be slightly better, but a whole lot of work. Next slide. Use the contact boxes, really with no modifications. One for the southeast Foursquare and one for the northwest Foursquare. Next slide. That's a 20 meter Foursquare that's right out by the road. So these elements are about 17 feet long. And it's a quarter wave spacing, same thing as what we do on 80. It's just for the receiving on the second station. Next slide. 15 meter Foursquare, right against the neighbor's shed. No problem. Except for one time he had a charger on his cordless drill that went supernova. And you could hear this thing, you point towards there and man, you hear it. Yes?
Tim, you mentioned earlier, I think, if I remember right, that the 20 and 15 meter Foursquares were transmitting. You don't use them for transmitting?
No, we don't.
So do you have a million radials under these as well, or do you use?
I have 60 radios.
Okay.
But I'm not sleeping good at night.
See, you're not doing like the high C guys or anything.
No. These are not active verticals or anything.
Okay.
This is all a contact box. We could transmit, but we don't. It's just for receiving. But I heard his charger, and so I said, Wayne, I can hear your charger. I can hear something in there. Went in there, and the thing was red hot. So much so it could have caused a fire. So he says, do you hear anything else? I'll let you know. Then, initially his reaction was, let me get this straight. I'm interfering with you? Next slide. So here's John N2NC, and my favorite receiving antenna has replaced all the beverages at K3LR. This is the high Z8 circle. This is not something you take out of the box and install the Friday morning of a contest. This took months to get it right. There's a lot of stuff that goes on here. But there's 8 of these little boxes in a circle. In the center is a fridge. That's an old box I got from Doc Scheller. And that's where all the electronics lives. Next slide. So there's a close-up of the fridge where all the RG6 cables come into. You can see that there's a back vertical and one of the side verticals. The verticals are 23 feet tall. Next slide. Inside the fridge, these are all the combiners from High Z. This is a different kind of array because we use this on 80 and 160 at the same time. What we do is we take all the verticals, all 8 verticals come in and get split in half. So there's a 3 dB hit there, and one side of that 3 dB split goes to the 160 meter combiner, one side goes to the 80 meter combiner. So that the operators on 160 can move that array in 8 different directions, and the guy on 80 can move it in 8 different directions, totally different. They don't know they're both using the same array. So it works very well, but that's why there's even more electronics that it takes to do that. Next slide. Version 2 was, maybe those feed lines are part of the antennas. Maybe those feed lines going out to these verticals are picking up noise.
Well, sure they are.
Yes. Well, this cured sleeping troubles too.
You didn't sleep well, right?
And maybe putting DC on RG6 going out to these verticals is not the best idea either, because just the smallest amount of moisture will cause noise. So we actually modified the High Z, and in fact there's a new High Z preamp coming out that allows you to do this, that there's a separate power feed so that you don't have DC running down that line. And that was good. But each one of the power and signal lines are choked at the vertical and at the combiner. So this is the wall, this is the, actually the DC feed system. Those F connectors there for all the DC power, then it goes to a choke, and then an RG6 line that just carries power. You'll see P's and S's. And these chokes were built by N3RR, and you see 559, 580. Each one of them was meticulously designed, tuned, and recorded. I have plots of each one of these chokes, and they're all matched perfectly, so that they're all the right electrical length, they're all the same electrical length.
Tim,
Yes.
you get any water in the ones that are outside?
No.
Have you checked them yet?
The chokes?
Yeah.
I have weep holes in all those.
You have what?
Weep holes. Everything I put outside has a weep hole.
Because I have those too from RR.
Yeah, no, each one of these has a weep hole in the bottom of it. You can't put anything outside in where we live and not have a weep hole. You can seal this up for, the better you seal this, the more water you're gonna get in there. You know why? I mean, you traverse 32 degrees, it sweats. So no, all, these have 2 weep holes in the bottom of each one. Even though they're inside a box. Absolutely. Everything has weep holes. To go back to the shack, I've got 7/8 50 ohm. We use 75 to 50 ohm transformers there. It's all 75 until it comes back to the shack. Next slide. This is W3YQ. Tim, he's done some antenna work out here and done the antenna work all over the place. He's no longer doing antenna work, but he and I spend weekends together working on things, and sometimes he comes down to help me tweak this thing out. Next slide. So here's all the cabling that goes on with those chokes. Next slide. And then all the cabling coming over into the actual splitters themselves. Next slide. And this is the bottom box that is used for each one of the verticals. And here is the secret to survival at K3LR in a multi environment. And what that is 2 100 microhenry chokes in series. This array at about 5 megahertz goes deaf. Absolutely deaf. These are active preamps, and if it didn't go deaf, 40 meters, 20 meters, 15 meters, 10 meters, it'd all be mixing and creating all sorts of crap. But that choke right here actually dumps all that, so the array stops working after 80 meters, which is quite good. Next slide. So inside the box is the high impedance preamp, and then power and signal. And you can see there are 2 F connectors on the preamp itself. One is power, the other is signal. Very simple, just ground connection over on the right, and the element comes in up on the top. Next slide. This is all the preamps that it takes to make this beast go. I have an 8-circle and a 4-square receiving array. They're designed exactly the same, everything the same, just one has 8 elements and the other has 4. They're broadside on Europe, 500-foot spacing, 3 dB pop. The RDF goes up, so it's very nice. Next slide. This is the inside. Signal, remember this. This is the inside of the choke, 27 turns on a number 31 Barrett core. Very nicely made. This is the house at K3LR. It was built in 1865. Civil War house. I live on Elliott Road. This was the Elliott farmhouse. And so it did not look like this when I bought it. All I was concerned, my wife said, there's no heat upstairs. When we moved in, I said, I didn't know that. Look at that land. What did we do? But everything has been added here. We've added, added air conditioning, of course, added AC power. I mean, this was before AC power. This, running water, all this stuff was all added to this place, but it is, we added on to it for the radio room, etc., but it's a nice period house. And in fact, in the middle here, this used to be a widow's watch. There was a porch up there with a door and everything. We took that out and bricked that over, but It is, the land itself was worth it. Go ahead. We have our own 50 kW power transformer. I used to share a 15 kW one with the neighbor. That didn't go over very, when we started doing multi-multi, that was not good. It got a little warm and the power, the voltage came down. If that fails, next slide. We have a 50 kW Kohler natural gas generator. This comes on in 8 seconds. So if we lose power, 8 seconds later, we'll have power back. That's a 8-cylinder Chevy engine. And it'll run as long as the natural gas feeds it. So only one time have we lost power during a DX contest. It was before the generator, well before. We had an ice storm and ARL foam. The antennas were no good at that point. The ice was so big on the antennas. We had quit. And we were just sitting around eating all the food that we had, because we had bought all this food for the contest. And then the power went off. It was off for 6 hours. But for field day, we turned this on and it works great. And hopefully we don't have to use it. Yeah. This is one of the overview shots of the 11 operating positions at K3LR. It's pretty tight. It's a 30-foot by 30-foot room. But it is very functional. Next slide.
You don't buy icon radios, do you?
Oh, do we buy icon radios? Another view of some of the operating positions. We use the ICOM IC7851. It's the same radio everywhere. You're going to see a lot of same. That makes it very easy to maintain, and it's good on the operators. This actually is the 80-meter operating position where the run and the mult station are side by side. And each station has its own amplifier, its own computer, etc. Next slide. We have 2 cable entrance points. This is the southeast one. You can see lots of cables coming in. And the next one is the northeast. Lots of stuff coming in there. Next slide.
How do you keep them straight?
Well, they're all marked and they're all cataloged. In the ground, underneath the operator, so right underneath the operating desk, is a ground system that is in the floor. Before I poured the floor, we put in 13 ground rods. And there are 13 8-foot ground rods right underneath the operators. So that takes all that ground thing off the table. It's a non-issue. Next slide. So here's some shots of some of the operators and some of the locations and stuff. 160 meters is right behind K1DG's head, but this is the 15-meter position with Ward and Doug operating 15CW. Next slide. And here's K1DG on the phone. Notice the last slide, if you go back one, there was no boom microphones on the Bose headsets, but now the boom microphones are up, and that means we're on phone. Next slide.
K3UR.
K3UA, who has been to lots of these multi operations. Here's gold medal winner from 2014, Dan N6MJ, operator with Phil on 15 phone. You can see the ICOM radios. These are antenna switch boxes. We'll talk about them in a minute. 160 meters and N2NC behind N6MJ's head. And this is in the morning, this is Saturday morning of CQ Worldwide, and NC has been up for over 24 hours at this point. So he gets to lay back in the chair because he's hoping a VE7 will call him.
What's the white box with the 3, looks like 3
Tuners,
That's the amplifier.
with 3?
Well, there was a rotary inductor, and this weekend we removed it and put it in a high-performance non-rotary inductor. So we're getting ready for John to come out for the CQ Worldwide 160, and I wanted to make an improvement. But that amplifier used to be owned by W4DR, and he used it between 80 and 160, so it had a rotary. But that rotary inductor is like 100 years old and was falling apart, and so we finally got around to putting a fixed inductor.
8877?
Yes, single 8877 and all these homebrew amplifiers.
They're probably.
Yes. So this is the 10-meter mult position. There's the IC7851. We talked about the 4 antennas that they have all the green heron boxes. This is the one at 275 feet. We're going to talk a little bit about the switch boxes, but they've got the middle two antennas are lit. There's the watt meter. There's their single band amplifier. This is the run, the 10 meter run single band amplifier. So just tune and load there. No band switch needed. Next slide. So here's, for instance, on 40 meters, this is the switch box. Currently, only the 260-foot antenna is online, but allows you instant switching. There's no rotary switch. You can go from 260 to high-low if you like, but that allows maximum flexibility. Next slide. Actually, we upgraded the box, so it looks like this now. In this current configuration, the 260, 190, 120 are all fed together, so a third of the power is going to each one. There are the switch, the RF switch is actually in the middle of each one of the stacks, and then by using coax, that's the transformer. There's no ferrite transformers. It's all done with 50, 35, and 75 ohm coax. Next slide. So on the 4 high stacks that we have on 10, 15, and 20 meters, you actually have 10 combinations of those stack antennas. You can feed any one by itself. You can feed all 4. You can feed the top 3, the bottom 3, the top 2, the mid 2, the bottom 2 by just hitting the switches. Next slide. So here's 15 meters and N6 TV and N6 AN operating. And again, you can only have one of these transmitters on the air at a time. We do have an interlock box that makes sure. So here's the 15 meter run box. It's just feeding the bottom 3, 120, 80, and 40 feet. Next slide. And the heads up display, just in case he's not looking down at the switch, we also have LEDs right on the watt meter, so he knows exactly what he's feeding. Next slide.
Great.
Love these watt meters. Simple, reliable, yeah. Except for the SO239s wear out after 50 years. Go figure. So we took and put new SO239s in there. Coax connectors, coax connections. Such a big deal in a multi-multi. One loose connection can tear the whole thing down. And so that was a big project to go around and modify all those and drill them out, put new hardware in, but it was well worth the effort. Next slide.
Icon pads.
Yeah? So Sandy DL1QQ brought a mug to put on top of the 40 meter rotor boxes. Size matters. So this is the 260 over 190 over 120. And N9RV once said, this is like a museum, nothing ever moves, because we put up stickers and notes. And this is N2NC's isolation notes. They're always there. They don't move no matter what. Next slide. Single band amplifiers, we talked a little bit about that. On each band, just a single 8877. We're very religious about running 1500 watts. We play by the rules. W3LPL plays by the rules. WE3C plays by the rules. So we have no doubt that everybody is doing the exact same thing. And because you don't have a band switch, these things are ultra reliable. Next slide. Each one of them has their own 4,000 volt power supply. Someday, maybe we'll do solid state when I'm convinced we're there. We're close, but we're not quite there yet. And I've got like 25 years worth of supply of 8870s. And you know, if I go to try and sell this stuff, I'll have to give it away. Next
Can you
slide.
put me on that list?
This is the 20 meter run position with its 4 rotor boxes and 7851 and amplifier. Next slide. So side by side, malt on the left, they have the capability of bringing on that 4 square for the malt station, and then run on the right. Everything in here goes to its own master ground panel for each band. So that's another trick of keeping all the interstation interference down. The radio, the amplifier, the computer, the antenna switch all go to one ground bus bar. That goes down to that under the floor ground system. Next slide. 10 meters. They've been a little lax here recently, but this is George N3GJ. I found him at a Hamfest. He beat me in a CW copying contest. And I said, who are you? Because he lives in Pittsburgh. And he says, oh, well, I operate VHF contests. I says, I got a VHF band for you. I said, it's about 28 megahertz. He is an amazing guy. Here a few weeks ago, when John N2NC and I we did CQ Worldwide CW, I think he had 30 contacts, something like that. And he was just as happy as when he's made 3,000 contacts. He is one heck of a CW operator, and he's a great phone operator, high rates with K1AR. Together, N3GJ and K1AR have the highest rate at K3LR ever, 385 QSOs in 1 hour in Europe. So but George is the real deal. He never complains, happy, eats like crazy, and as skinny as a rail. So he's a super guy. Next slide. This is 160 meters. A lot going on here. We talked about a lot of these receiving things. There's just one station here and the one amplifier. Next slide.
You still have the old geochrons on the wall.
Yes, that's another thing that I can't throw away. So the two walls have the old ones, two walls have the new ones. Another shot of this is the box for the 4 square and the 8 circle for the direction boxes of the high Z. Next slide. Here's N2NC at the controls on the phone. Barefoot, yeah, run on barefoot.
Done some pretty good rates.
You'd never know that this was in October. Next slide.
I'm sure it's a little over there.
Yeah, it does. And we've got 2 3-ton air conditioners, so that helps. This is the control for the horizontal waller flag, and we also use the DX Engineering NCC. This has been upgraded to an NCC2. We actually phase that transmit array with the high Z arrays. Actually, John is better at this than I am, but it results in another 3 dB pop when this stuff is lined up correctly. Next slide. Sandy, DL1QQ, has operated with us several times. A great CW operator, great phone operator, and Sandy and I were a team at WRTC this past July. So she likes coming over to the US, and she operated at W3LPL this past October, and LPL said, "You're welcome back anytime." We use the Bose QC15s. Years ago, I think it was over at Ollie's, A61AJ. The operators over there, some of them had the Heil, some of them had the Bose, and the guys with the Bose were getting more calls, faster, better. I tried the QC2s, it had a little box, and I said, this is really good. And the QC15s are even better. And so we modified them so that we can put a high clip on for phone. They are amazing headphones, and noise canceling is really important when you have 11 amplifiers and 11 operators and 11 fans and air conditioners going. Next slide. 7851, it is, we like the ergonomics, I like the reliability, they don't die, they don't give us any trouble, and they work really good. They are not the best on Sherwood's list, but they're plenty good enough for what we're doing. Next slide. This is my friend Al in 5UM. I lived in Oklahoma City for 14 years, and I met Al there, and he has come up and operated the phone contest. Al and I operate 75 meters together in the phone contest. Next slide. This is Al at 4:15 in the morning. He's just taking a little power nap after European sunrise and before we start working our 4 or 5 JAs. You can also see here a very good photo of the computers that we use at K3LR now, which is the Intel NUC, which John has right there. This is a full-fledged Windows fast multi-core processor computer with sound card, hard drive, memory, the whole bit. It runs on 12 volts, and it's RFI quiet. It's really good. So all of the computers, all those desktops are all gone now. It's all Intel notes. Next slide. Another shot behind the 20-meter run of the NUC there. Lots of ferrite at K3LR. Ferrite, ferrite, ferrite. And you can get all of that now at DX Engineering. Lots of ferrite. The more ferrite, the better. I'll tell you, I put on ferrite every week. It just, you cannot, every time, and I know John has gone through this, when you start really working at your station, you're trying to get that noise floor down, it does make a difference. There's so many things that can cause noise, and you don't even know it. And so breaking up all these feed lines and all these control lines is really important.
You don't have any wall boards in your station.
Not one. And in fact, you come with your iPhone charger.
Oh, you get kicked out.
John knows. I have special power supplies. Yeah. Yeah, there's no wall boards. This is how we share the pair of 4 squares between the run and the mult station. It's the 80-meter XL twin turbo +2 switch. What this allows is the run guy's sitting there running right along, and if the mult guy wants to call somebody, the minute he hits the key or hits the foot switch, that antenna system flops, and suddenly the run guy now has the high dipole, so it's a flip switch. And it's done with a high-speed RF swap switch, and this intelligence here, and that way the 2 transmitters can go back and forth on that same antenna system, bang, bang, bang.
Is that a 940?
No, this is an Icon IC78. That's right there. Boy, you had me scared. The screwdriver controller used to be for the top, that dipole. It ran a tornado tuner. You know how you say that every shack has at least one MFJ piece of gear? I'm happy to tell you that we have stopped using the screwdriver controller due to some failures, and that's gone. so I got to modify this switch or put a circle here with a red slash. This is the high Z8 circle for the 80-meter operator. Next slide. Down Nostalgia Road. I saw these when I was a kid and got to operate at N2AA K2GL. These were custom-made, high-power harmonic filters that Buzz Reeves had made. And when Buzz died, he left all his ham equipment to Georgia Tech, which was his alma mater. So these things went down to Georgia. NQ4I saw them, and he bought them. He said, you college kids don't need these high-power harmonic filters. And so when Rick got out of the multi-multi game, he said, would you like to have, yes! So we got them for 80, 40, 20, 2 of them on each one, put them on a pallet, and got them up from Georgia, but they started out life at a very prestigious multi-multi station. And so we completely rebuilt them from the ground up, all new hardware, got all the water out, all the stuff that was in there. And so we use these to knock down the harmonics that come from the transmitters. All these antennas are pretty closely located. You know how hard it is on field day. And when you're trying to run 1,500 watts at these multi-multi stations, and these made a big difference. So you can see the picks for the W4s are right on the filters. Next slide. Well, where operators go to relax, K3LR, it's the DX barn. Next slide. And so you can see right outside here, this is not DX Engineering. The insurance company, you know, they've been out a lot with this 20-meter tower thing. They said, are you doing business out of there? I said, no, that's DX Gas. That's the gas guys. Back in the 60s, I found this in Sulphur, Oklahoma. And I had it shipped up. Next slide. Beautiful sign. These things on eBay sell for lots of money, and it's in pristine shape. Next slide. And at the end of every contest, I turn it on. Next slide. So inside, very nice restroom and kitchen facilities. for operators to be able to sleep. We can sleep 6, 7, 8 operators. Next slide. And in the back, the Holy Grail. Over 100,000 QSL cards. See, I've already ordered a casket large enough. I have some time on my hands and I can sort this. Next slide. Next slide. So a couple of, here's a happy FRC op, and the N2NT with BE3EJ. This is on CW because the keys are out and there's no mics. Next slide. Now, the ARL phone contest with K1AR, 20 meters. These guys have been doing 20 together for a long time.
I have to talk to them about that white triple C.
Yeah.
Well,
What's up with that?
that's a WRTC thing, and he was the rules guy.
Oh, that's right.
So he gets a little bit of a hall pass.
No,
You gotta give a pitch.
We use the DX engineering foot switch. How many people have had a Heil foot switch explode? If you haven't, you will. Well, for UCW guys, we use this on sideband to make sure that the radio station is working for CW weekends. But these are meant to last, and they do not explode. They work very good. Next slide.
Do they have a medical equipment, yes?
I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you use it for?
I say CW with it.
Well, test your station to make sure it's ready for CW on those weekends that are not a CW contest. I know it's still, I'm getting that blank look. This is the interface that goes between the run and the mult station to make sure only one transmitter is on the air. And it was designed by W8WWB. Our run stations have priority, so when they hit the foot switch or they hit the key, they've got it. And the second station cannot transmit at all. And so the second station can only transmit when that run guy takes a break.
So he can stop. The run guy can stop them all.
Yes,
That's-
because he has to control the frequency. But we actually, as neat of a deal as this is, because what it does is it jams the mult station in the inverter mode. And then, so it's harmless at that point. But of all people, Marty Sullivan has designed a better system, which will debut in,
Marty's this young kid from.
yeah, he's the real deal. He came out with a really nice little circuit. And so you're going to see more things about NN1C is Marty's new call. Next slide. So when that lockout box is not active, when the run station is not transmitting, that high-tech LED is off. So that the mult guy knows he can transmit. Next slide. When it's on, if he tries to transmit, it's going to be locked out. Next slide. So here's, we talked about the second station, the mult station. Here's the control of the 4 square. And the second station can listen on the Aggies, or it can listen on the 4 square. Okay, next slide. We had a lot of fun. That's the main thing. And how many in here watched the game last night, the football game, college football? 2 very accomplished big-time coaches. One of them wraps so tight, I don't know how he doesn't have a heart attack every other week. And one of them was pretty loose. And I think part of that is the success of what happened last night. We run a little loose. We're very serious about this game. But the number one goal is to have a good time. Next slide.
Are you a little serious?
I'm very intense. but I have a counselor, and I'm going to introduce you to the counselor. Next slide. So here's Otis, NP4G. Otis came to Contest University in Dayton. He said, hey, I'd like to come and operate with you guys. Here's my contest resume. I read it over, and I said, you're hired. So he's been on 10 meters with George. It's nice to have a Spanish-speaking guy this time of the cycle. So Otis is a dentist in Puerto Rico. He comes up, he's coming to Dayton again this year. Really, really good guy. Next slide. And there he is operating. Next slide. And having more fun, you know? And that's what it's all about.
Love this ham radio show.
That, absolutely. Here's Phil on 80 meters. Phil does 15 and 80. He goes 15 foam and 80 CW. And there's Justin G4TSH. Justin is operated, he comes over from London. He's been with us for 10 years now. So he's a very, very good CW operator. Next slide. And here's the Shack actually in CQ Worldwide CW this year. John mentioned the Geochron on 160. We now have the 80-inch TV in between the 15 meter and 10 meter positions with the new Geochron that drives the HD TVs, and then 40.
Where can we buy that?
Is that, yes, I didn't know.
It's only available there.
It's only like $300. It's not that expensive.
But
This is all an infomercial.
it's very, very, very subtle. Very subtle. Very subtle.
Sam,
Yes.
just a quick question. You have so many operators and whatnot. One of the biggest problems I have is a comfortable chair. What's the preference? I've been looking for these chairs, looking at what you're using.
This is, there are a couple of these chairs that were very Herman Miller. There are a couple of Herman Millers in there. The rest of them, they cleaned out the boardroom once at Cellular One in Oklahoma City, and I said, I've got a place for those. And so I got a guy to bring them up. But these Herman Millers are about as comfortable as they get. They breathe, chick. They've got a nice mat in the back. So it works out pretty good. Next slide. We keep analytics and statistics, very maniacal about that.
Real time or no?
No, not real time, but historical. And again, looking at past performance can help give us some idea what the future might look like. Next slide. So we know our high water marks, which is a nice way to give goals. For instance, this is the ARLDX foam contest. This was as of 2013, so this is a little dated, but you can see, you know, our high QSO total on 20 meters was 2853, and our high country mark was 165. So, and then we keep track of who won. That's what I got to worry about. And what the difference is to the K3LR score. Remember, there, you know, back to the football game last night. Back in 1991, when I was just starting to build the multi station, I was in Dayton, and there was a guy from the East Coast, and he says, I don't know why you're building a multi. You'll never win.
It took you a while.
It took 6 years before we won our first one in 1998, but since then we've won 40 more. So not bad. Next slide.
I see a FRC.
So we got into the CW skimmer game early on, so that we have CW skimmers, one for each band. So there's a computer and an SDR. It's a Perseus SDR. And I have a relay switching system that allows the antennas that are not in use, not being transmitted on, to be fed to the CW skimmers. This is what the skimmer rack used to look like until 2 years ago, and now it looks like this. Nuts! These nooks actually that are on the SDRs now, these are twice the thickness of the one that John has, and they have twice the horsepower. But we can out-skim anybody because we have dedicated receivers for each band. So we have 6 times the processing power of like just a QSR1. Lots of ferrite. Lots of ferrite. These computers here are our hot spares. We have 2 hot spare computers in case we would lose them, and we have 2 cold spares in case everything craps out. Next.
Tim, what mix are those? The ferrites that you're using right there?
Ferrite 31.
31?
We do use some 73s on the on 160 type stuff. So here are the 6 Perseus receivers that are fed by the Nooks. Here are the dedicated linear power supplies. I believe Accupine is in Philadelphia. Accupine.
Oh,
Very, very good power supply.
Easton.
Very clean.
Copian, isn't it?
Copian.
Yeah, it's Easton, yeah.
Yeah, very good. So one power supply powers all the Perseus receivers and one powers all the Nooks. We use whatever antennas are left over, what aren't being transmitted on. Next slide. Another shot of the Perseus. Finally, so back.
Sorry, I don't know how to do that.
Oh, okay. More ferry. Oh, there it is. These are ISO pluses, which finally are going to roll off the manufacturing. That quiets down all the birdies from the Ethernet system. So look for that at your favorite ham radio store soon.
What was it called?
My memory is going.
What's the product called?
ISO plus.
ISO plus.
ISO plus.
And they're Ethernet filters?
Knocks down birdies and crap by about 30 dB. Next slide. Barry. Next slide. Power distribution for the nuts. Next slide. And power supplies. Next slide. Coffee. K3LR came up to me years ago and he said, "Man, we are really loud. We get out good, we hear good, having a good time." And I had a big coffee urn, the big coffee urn with all the big grounds and everything. He says, "But your coffee sucks." And he said, at KC1XX, he's got a custom coffee. I said that. So we upgraded ourselves to the Flavia system, and now we make it a cup at a time. Next slide. And lots of snacks. This is the healthy stuff. Back before John got involved, John now does a lot of this procurement. There were chips and pretzels, and man, he says, "Timmy, you're killing the ops." Next slide. Here's our counselor and chef, Sal.
An FRC.
FRC. And Sal knows his beef. I just got a new smoker delivered for Sal. He's going to try it out in March, but very happy to have Sal on the team. Next slide. Keeps everything in the kitchen running smooth. Next.
Attorneys here.
Yes, Barney and Carol. So, NC has this breakfast that he does. And so he has a little ordering form that he hands out to the operators every morning. And the operators get to choose their eggs and then meat. And he brings the special pork roll and Jersey. Really very cool. So K1DG, this is his order.
That's it.
Next slide. And that's what it looks like. It comes out. And again, John does this after staying up all night and working 160 meetings. So it's no walk in the park for him to make breakfast after that. Next slide. We eat well at K3LR. We try to. That's one of the things John told me early on. He says an army travels on its stomach, and we have embraced that. Next slide. We use WinTest. There's a lot of different programs out there. I think I paid like $55 one-time fee in 2006. I learned about WinTest in the back of a bus with W2GD in Florianópolis, Brazil. And he said, "Look, I was still trying to make these DOS computers last for the rest of my life, so that I could
Still do.
Yeah, we do, there's guys to do.
so that I could use CT forever." I was such a K1EA CT fan that when it came time to put an acronym together for Contest University, the reason it's CTU was in memory of all the hard work that Ken Wolf had done for CT, which revolutionized contesting as we know it. But this WinTest, super stable, super easy to make work in a networking form, good support, when you got TV Bob in the house, geez, doesn't get any better. But, you know, most of us can figure out anything that we need to with it, but it has just been so rock stable. It doesn't do all the fancy stuff that N1MM does, but for what we're doing, it works great for us. Next.
What goes on that big white?
I love this ham radio ship. I'm very proud of that little saying, ILTHRS. So now I can be W2YB unplugged here. And, there's Sal and Sal's girlfriend Liv, who comes up and helps as well. Here's a WA20VE FRC. Of course, Andy and Phil, W2RQ there with N2NC. So we always take a photo at the end of the dinner. Next slide. This is the CW team from 2014. Another slide. Here's a very recent. Here's the 2018 team. K1TO joined us for the first time. And VE3RA is another 10-meter CW guy who doesn't complain, has a good time, and works very hard on behalf of the team. It's tough for K3LR to win CW contests, especially at the low part of the cycle. There's just not, W3LPL has gotten better running rate. They've gotten, their accuracy is better, and so it's very hard, but we have the high claim win score. We went 3 years without winning in the CQ Worldwide CW, and this one, hopefully after log checking, we'll be there. Next. The real reason we do this is because we're good friends. And what is a better way to hang out for a weekend with your best buddies on the radio, and having good food and good coffee, and we tell the same stories over and over. I mean, as much as going on in the log sheets, is going on in the gab too. The gab goes constantly. Next slide. I'm very, very proud of the fact that we have over 20 clubs every year that visit K3LR. Come up and do a tour, see the antennas, get on the air, have a good time. This actually was the University of Pittsburgh Pitt Panther radio club that came up. We sat around for a whole day on Saturday and talked about ham radio, talked about studying in school, talked about life after school, got on the radio, had a good time. Like I said, I have over 20 tours a year, in addition to the contest and getting ready for the contest, that we do to try and give back to the hobby. And that is that.
So, yeah, I'd like to know, what's the delay from the skimmer till it goes out live on the network?
It's instantaneous.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's really quick. You know, Steve, K3RL, I was telling him, you know how CQ gives you that list of your log checking report? He gets a lot of K3LR QSL cards because the JAs, they will flop R&L a lot. So, yeah, it's pretty good. Dave, what did I forget to mention? You had a list of questions on.
I was just interested in how close your operators can get on in-band without interference, and any special technology or filtering that you use to allow that close coupling.
You know, the real secret there is all of the interconnecting cables at K3LR are RG400, which are all, that's double shielded stuff. And they're all the Amphenol 831SP connectors, and they're all tight. And I check them for tight a lot. That's the big thing. And then, of course, these 4-square arrays. As far as how close you can get, there's a couple of techniques that are used. For instance, John in 2NC has figured out that the run stack on 40, if you aim all the run antennas at 40 degrees, and then you take the Yagis on the second station and put them at certain azimuths, that it completely nulls out the run. And you can, how close can you get, John?
Kilohertz.
Yeah.
But the new radios with the lower phase noise made it different. You know, it's all the accumulated improvements over the years.
So the grounding, the ferrite, and actually we're going to go another step on this. Those of you who have read the grounding and bonding book that Ward Silver did, there's ground planes underneath radios, and that's going to be the next step. I mean, I'm going to continue to beat that down. That is the biggest single thing we can do to raise our ability to work more guys. So, yeah, that is a constant deal. That's not just a hook it up one weekend and forget it. Yeah, lots of filtering.
I always wondered, how big is your area of your property?
It's 11 acres on one side of the street and 1 acre on the other side.
What's on the other side of the street?
The 4-square receiving array that is in phase with the 8 circle is on the other side. And then we tunneled underneath the road with the coax. And, I went up to the township building and I said, I'd like to tunnel underneath the road. I'm going to put a 4-inch conduit in there and put some feed lines. I said, oh, Mr. Duffy, I'm sorry to inform you, on January 1st, we had a rate increase. If you want to tunnel underneath the road, it's going to cost you $20 now. Where do I sign? Yes.
Tim, I've never operated with a stack of arrays on the low bands, anything, okay? What do you see the difference between these different height antennas? How can you explain what you see when you're switching from one antenna to the other?
I don't know. On the low bands, so let's say 40 meters.
Yeah, let's say 40 meters.
I'd like to be able to tell you, but I've never operated 40 at my place. But that guy has.
I don't know, when Tim added a third high antenna, he surprised me. And he had talked about it for years, and I was like, I don't know, Tim, I think diminishing returns, but I can say after playing, what's been 5, 6 years now?
5 or 6 years, yeah.
It's an also improvement that late night stuff, those through the low sun spots, you need an incredibly low angle. We also have an antenna in the daytime. Before he put the 3 antennas up, I can never find a combination in the afternoon where one was any better than the other. But like Tim had mentioned, for some reason, I don't know if the top 2 antennas have a high angle lobe in the afternoon, but there's definitely that pop that Tim talked about.
This is basically, so the most important thing is when the band is dead.
No, it's just to have the flexibility to adapt to the conditions that present you. It's also nice, sometimes you get JA in Europe at the same time, to spray a little bit towards Japan. Tim yells at you if you turn them too far away from Europe. In fact, there's a special sign for me on the 40-meter station, no DXing. So.
You check up on your operators, Tim?
Just a little bit. But I've actually gotten better over the years. I have a squeeze ball now. But sometimes there's a pop there, and sometimes there's not, but it's a QSB situation that also plays into it. I have spent time on 40 outside of the contest operating that, because it's just, you go downstairs and it's not a contest and you say, geez, there's 12 elements on 40. I think I might like to have some fun. But we also have recordings of what we sound like in Bangkok, Thailand, and it's just amazing. They go down the band and you hear W3LPL and then you hear K3LR. It's something. Yes?
At WE3C, we sometimes do them out of phase.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it makes a diminished difference.
Yeah, we've talked about that. We have that capability on 2 of our antenna systems to go out of phase. I have looked at, actually, there is, WAWWB has come up with a whole system, and I almost went to this, where we could feed all 4 antennas, or all 3 antennas, all the time, and just use out of phase to do the tipping. And the reason I didn't go to that is because of that spray situation. We could find ourselves in a bad situation by going out of phase and having one antenna towards JA and one towards Europe. So what we've done is, and I've looked at this really hard, we've tried to provide enough selections, but not too many. Because you can get yourself into a bad situation by not having the right selection online, and suddenly you're 5, 6, 7 dB down, and you don't know it. So we're covering all the angles that I believe we need to, but that's still on the plate. I know about that technology, but I believe with the way we spray, on 20 meters and 15 meters, there's a lot of spraying that goes on. And if you were to put yourself into an out-of-phase situation where you were feeding them all, it is a mess. So it's a much cleaner system this way. You know, we could make this a whole lot more complicated, but I don't want to do that. Remember, remember, I'm a host, I'm an operator, I'm trying to sleep, and I'm the chief technician too. So, you know, things have to be reliable. Things have to be simple, and you know, I think it's very important that I contribute to the score as an operator, not just as, is anything broken? Do you need anything to eat? I have to be all in too.
So what's your biggest maintenance headache?
During a contest?
Yeah. Well, anytime.
At any time. Maintenance goes on all the time. I mean, every week tower crew's in there with over 50 antennas. There's always something to do or improve. You know, there was actually antenna systems that I wanted to add between Worldwide and ARL, but because of this 40-meter problem, we're not going to be able to do that. So there's always stuff to do. Constant list. I mean, I make lists. I have a note card that I keep during the contest of all the things that are either wrong or I think about, and it front and back, and sometimes it goes into 2 note cards.
Well, if it doesn't come down, it's not big enough.
No, I don't want stuff coming down. It's well engineered. Anybody else?
What's new? What's the plan for the future now? Any new, like 4-element Yagi on 80?
Little things. Someday maybe an 80-meter tower. I need to acquire more land to do that. And I mean, that's sort of on the bucket list. It'd be nice to have. It might get us another 50 cubes. I don't know. You know, but the investment is huge to do that.
How about the expeditions? You ever?
You know, I've done limited work in that area. I've tended to just kind of focus on this. I've tried to, you know, I got into a kick. In fact, Herb brought over an amplifier, a 2-meter amplifier, went and bought all the 6-meter amplifier. You know, I got all these amplifiers, and John has made up some stuff, and John is trying to drag me into VHF, and there's so much on that HF list to do, and you know, we have a good string of operations going. That's kind of my focus.
How many work bands do you want?
None. I couldn't even tell you what the allocations are. There's no contest there.
Yeah, and sorry, Tim, you're probably going to get some of my cards now.
Okay.
Because people have confused your call with mine now. So
And it's on 12 meters, 17 meters, 30 meters.
FT8.
FT8, oh, what's that?
If you want to put up a new tower and you're having what kind of governmental hoops do you have to go through?
Just fill out an application, and it might be $20. It was 15. No, it's
PE or anything to design it? Or?
yeah, I always do that as a matter, you know, from the insurance company standpoint and so forth. But yeah, it's not hard. We're lucky, very fortunate. But that's, you know, we're on the western side.
1 mile from Ohio.
1 mile. 1.0.
And no work.
No work
You
antenna.
don't want to hear it.
You know, if a work antenna was there, it might interfere with the real stuff.
Might break up your head.
What county are you in?
Mercer.
Oh, okay, that's perfect.
Anything else?
Thank you.
How many of you here have attended Contest University? Including me. If you're going to date, think about going to Contest University. Tim's a little famous in this area. He's the father, or the grandfather now maybe, of Contest University. And it's been all over the world, not only in Dayton, Ohio, but also in Italy and a few other places. And it is really worth going to. You'll learn a lot. I'm signed up this year. I learned something when I go to these. And I'm sure you can too. So think about it if you're going to date. Tim, thank you very much.
You want to do this? Yes, you. All right. First of all, we've got a few little, just wait a second for the picture. We got a couple of things to help you out here. The first thing, when you're signing for that land for the 80-meter tower, you can use this. That's a
Frankford
memento of our 90th anniversary.
That's very nice.
That we had last year.
Very nice.
Use that good.
Very
And
nice.
I have to tell a little story.
Okay.
I'm relatively new to contesting. I got started in 2011. I've been a ham forever, but, and I remember when I first started getting into call-ups, every night I'd hear this K3LR guy in there. And hell, not knowing anything about your station, you had to go head to head with it, you know. I never ever won. So after a while,
That's the idea.
I figured this out. You know, I'm not completely stupid. So I just would cue us well off and work somebody else to come back later and keep going. And I usually work through the call-up. But you know, then I started listening to all, and he's working pretty quickly. So my challenge for you is every morning when you're having coffee from the Frankford radio.
Oh, very nice.
I want you to think about how to improve the station. So you can work with one call. Okay?
One call.
And think about me out there trying to get them.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for staying so late tonight, guys.